Welcome, everyone. I'm John Ryan of the Predictive Playbook, and I'm joined by Bo Crouch, the former arena football player. I was stuttering there a little bit trying to describe. We're missing two guys today. I guess they're on the injured list, for lack of a better explanation, and Rudy Reyes and Eytan Shander. So we hope they do get better very soon. But it's just going to be you and me, Bo, and I think we'll do a pretty good job. We will miss their expertise, certainly, but
Of course.
our show bets now are 9-3 against the spread, and we're looking to provide some helpful handicapping information again, and some insights and just thought-provoking material. So, without ado, let's get right to it. The Eagles have been on my radar, and it's not the good radar type where I'm looking to bet on them. And if there was ever a time to bet on them, you would think it's now. But they're coming off the bye. Most teams coming off the bye that are any good do play much, much better. They are going to have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith back in action. That's a huge plus. But the line already reflects all the good news. And with a line of 9.5, probably goes to 10 by Sunday. I'll show you why I like Cleveland. And Cleveland is in total disarray. The Eagles are a team in flux, I think. They need to get things under control at the top level of the management and the coaching staff, and then it'll trickle down to the players, and maybe it'll take a week or two to get back on track to where they're meeting their potential. But if they don't, they're going to struggle to be 500. So I'm willing to put a little bit of money, only a 5-unit bet on Cleveland. Cleveland is horrible offensively. We saw what happened with Deshaun Watson quitting. Flat out quitting.
Yep.
Just mind blowing. I mean, that's just something that never entered my mind as an athlete. And I'm sure you played at the professional level, Bo, and I'm sure that never crossed your mind either. No matter what the score is.
0 days ever, right? Like you play hard until you got triple zeros. Watching him just like walk off, and it's not even like it was the closing minutes and they were down 28-3. This was the third quarter. Right? Like you had time to do something. We've watched games where teams have come back from multiple score deficits in the closing minutes of a fourth quarter. So for you to be, kind of mid to late third quarter and just give up on a 4th and 1 and walk off the field was wild. It was wild to me.
It's not even a movie. It's just like, it's surreal. It's like somebody took AI and forced us to watch that. It just leaves such a bad taste in my mouth. I can't even begin to tell you what it feels like. But anyway, I guess to each his own. But the Eagles do rank 7th in the NFL, gaining an average of 366 yards per game. But they rank 17th, averaging 5.5 yards per play, and 31st, averaging 2 turnovers per game. That's second to last.
Yeah.
The Eagles' ground attack, led by Barkley, has been the saving grace. As a unit, they rank 4th, averaging 154 yards per game. And they certainly will need to pound the rock here, Bo, against this Cleveland defense, which on paper looks pretty darn good. That's the only good thing about Cleveland right now. As I said, the Eagles are coming off of the bye week. Currently, the Eagles have not stretched defenses to date with vertical routes, as they have averaged just 6.29 adjusted yards per pass attempt. And there's a formula for this. I won't get into it, but if you want to know, leave a comment or send me a message on the X, and I'll show you what the formula is. But it's a very good one, and I use it a lot in my algorithms. So the comparison with this 6.29 adjusted yards per pass attempt, the Broncos are dead last at 3.6, and we know why. The 5-0 Vikings are the best, and they're at 9.6. So you can see that their Eagles are at best in the middle of the pack, and they really need to throw some bombs. Even if they're not completed, Bo, they got to throw long passes to A.J. Brown and Smith because they're fast and they're good.
Well, and it keeps the safeties honest, right? Like they have to stay back. They can't crowd the box. And that's something coming into this game is the Eagles got A.J. Brown healthy, right? So that number I don't think is indicative of what it is they can do moving forward. I think it had more of a reflection of what they had available at the time, right? They just didn't have that dynamic receiver to push the field. So I think you'll see that number increase now that those guys, their full complement of receivers are back. And I mean, it's hard to feel good about any part of this Cleveland Browns team. And at this point, if you're Stefanski, you have to be being told that Deshaun is your guy, because there's no way that you wouldn't have set him down after that. Like, if I was a coach, and anything you've watched Stefanski prior to this, you see him as a coach, you know, he wanted to be like, yeah, you're kind of just done for the day. We got a backup. And besides, they were already getting blown out of this game anyway. I don't know why you wouldn't have done that, other than you have either a GM or an owner that's like, hey, we're paying this guy $230 million. He's playing. So it looks more like they care about their high dollar guy being out there than actually winning games, which is why, you know, straight up, I would be taking the Eagles for sure. The spread is tough because that's a big number. And we haven't seen consistent play out of the Eagles yet. So to your point, I mean, that 9-point spread is tempting. For me, though, I think the Eagles actually cover this. I think they are a 10-point, kind of a 10-point winner here, only because of the off the field dynamics of this Browns team. They sure seem like they're just falling apart.
Yeah, I agree. I'll counter it with this little betting algorithm that, you know, it's betting on situations. And that's kind of what I've done for 30 years. And the team and the mascot really don't matter. You know, the character of the organization is reflected in the number. But anyway, this algorithm has gone 40-55 straight up, 62-33 against the spread for 65% over the past 10 years. Not one of those years has had a losing season. That doesn't mean it goes undefeated. And this could be one of those times that it doesn't win.
Sure.
Anyway, you're going to bet on underdogs priced between 3.5 and 10 points. The dog has committed no more than a single turnover in each of their 2 previous games. They are facing a favorite whose defense forced 0 turnovers in their previous game. If the favorite is coming off the bye, these underdogs have barked very loudly, going 5-6 straight up, but 9-2 against the number for 82% over the last 10 seasons. That last little drill down is the reason why I'm going to probably put 5 units on a scale of 5 to 10 on the Browns. And then another consideration for this game, if the Browns would score first a touchdown and it's 7-0, I would be very tempted to try to middle this with a bet on the Eagles, or at least buy back some of my bet on Cleveland instead of trying to ride it to the end of the game. Because this could be a game that goes 7-0 Cleveland and ends up, 35-10 with an Eagles victory. So I'm not real bullish on Cleveland, believe me. But I think if I get any gift from the scoring gods with Cleveland leading in the first quarter, I'm gonna probably buy at least half of it back.
Yeah, no, this is definitely a game that I would hedge my bet, right? Like I could see throwing some money on Cleveland to cover, and then do some in-game betting to, still be able to afford that pizza.
Yeah, that's right. For you and the wife and the kids. I mean, that's the other issue too. It's can't let them go hungry. Well, anyway, I think we've gotten this one pretty well lined up. So let's get to tonight's game. And this is a very important game for San Francisco and Seattle. They're playing at 8:15. The game will be on Amazon Prime, of course. And the 49ers actually are coming off a loss to the Arizona Cardinals. And that was one of the plays that we had on the show last week. It was also a premium bet to my clients. And, at one point it looked like San Fran had a chance to kind of blow them out. And then all of a sudden, I don't watch the games entirely until after the games are over. And then I get those condensed things. And I can watch a game in 15 minutes. But nevertheless, they pulled it off. They won there in the closing seconds. And, maybe Arizona's not as bad as we thought. And maybe San Francisco is that team that doesn't get back to the playoffs. And that's one of the mind-blowing things about the Super Bowl is that it's not necessarily the Super Bowl winner or the loser although there is a hangover with the loser in the first 4 weeks of the season generally.
Yes.
What happens is that one of those teams doesn't make it back to the playoffs. And, in only 4 years in the last 25 have both teams made it back. It's mind-blowing. It really is. And it shows the parity. It also shows how tough it is to get to the Super Bowl in the first place. But anyway,
injuries generally have a huge factor in that, right? Because a lot of times, so whoever made it to the Super Bowl managed to keep most of their team healthy, right? And then the next year, you look at the Niners. You look at the Niners in that scenario, and they were mostly healthy all season. And then you come into this year, and the Niners definitely look, they have a lot of injuries, and that's actually going to be a huge storyline for tonight's game with Seattle and the 49ers. Is there's so many injuries, especially for Seattle. They're going to have an incredibly hard time stopping the run when you look at, the injuries on the defensive line, the injuries on the linebacking core. We watched that negatively affect them over the last 2 weeks versus the Lions and the Giants. They also last night end up ruling out Woolen and Byron Murphy. So with that element missing, I really think that, if you were going to do any prop bets during the game, I would put some money on Kittle because he's probably going to have a big game against a kind of a decimated defense for Seattle.
I like that play quite a bit. I should have looked up those prop bets, but we can always do that after the show, of course. I do think the overs with him and the backup tight end for the 49ers, I can't remember his name, but he's actually got an increase in targets.
Yep.
So maybe if there's props for him too. Bet both of them over with half a pizza on each one, maybe.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
I can't imagine that San Fran will not win this game convincingly. The line at -3 kind of has me freaked out because I think this is more of a 6.5 point game or line, if you will. San Fran coming off the loss. Now, they're not a bad team. They had the injuries on offense, but they're still number 2, averaging 407 yards per game, for goodness sake.
Yeah, it's the guys that they have on defense that are questionable going into this game is what's holding that line down, because Warner is still questionable. That's a huge element, and especially when you think of Kenneth Walker being back. They also have Charbonnet, right? So there is so 3.5 is the line depending on where it is you're looking, but because of that, they may have a harder time stopping the run. And of course, everybody knows that the trio of receivers that Seattle has is very dynamic, right? So you're going to see Seattle have an easier time moving the ball than they did last week. So this is a game that'll probably be closer than you would think, and mostly because both teams are just so injured in key spots on defense. So the other thing that was funny, I forget what the over-under is, but I want to say it was like 49 and a half.
Yep.
That is a line that, even though the number seems kind of high, may actually still be too low, just because both teams really don't have a lot of defensive players that are healthy. Even the guys that are going to be playing are banged up. So this is going to be a fun game to watch. Like, there's going to be a lot of firepower. It's not, if you like defense, though, this game might make you mad.
Well, it's true. I mean, we've had a few boring games, on prime time recently, relatively speaking.
Yep.
But yeah, I think you're right. And the other thing I'll add to it, and this is what's great about these discussions. I would have never thought about this in this matchup, and it does support the play on the over. Is that when these offenses start scoring points and say they're going up and down the field with little resistance, that means the defenses are going to get gassed with second and third unit players, which then in the fourth quarter is going to be a track meet. So maybe you get to halftime and say it is only 28 points at half or less. Then maybe the second half over, betting that these defenses are going to get really, really tired and not be the skill positions of a starter.
Yep.
And all of a sudden you have, the pinball machine going off. So I agree. I think there could be 60 points in this game. I wouldn't be surprised to see San Fran put up 35. Would you?
No, not at all. I mean, it's again, this is that game where you're just like, man, both defenses are missing really key guys. And, the only thing that might counter that is if both of them lean heavy on the run. If they lean heavy on the run, it'll be the under, right? Just because it requires too much time. Yeah. Like if you're using the running game, it chews the clock up. But and neither team will probably be able to stop the run super well. But because so many things will be open across the middle and up the seams, especially for San Fran, they'll be able to target their tight ends all day. Like that'll be wide open all day. So yeah, I don't know. It's going to be a fun game. It's going to be a fun game.
Yeah, both defenses are allowing over 100 yards. Seattle's allowing 128 against the rush. So that makes total sense to me too here. All right, let's move on to the next game, and that is my newfound love in Washington with the Commanders. Ever since they got rid of that former owner, and he always made me mad because I was actually sending emails saying that, you got to change the name of your team to at least the Iron Condors. I thought the Iron Condors actually was a pretty cool name for him. Certainly much better than the rec league type team they had as the football team, the Washington
that was
football
ridiculous.
team. Yeah. That kind of was just like, wow, But anyway.
And now they're stuck with the Commanders because they're winning, right? Like you can't change the name now.
Well, Commanders and Guardians, that's a separate show, but baseball team a Guardian doesn't sound like a baseball team.
That's fair.
Commanders sounds more footballish, but it also doesn't it's not like a foot soldier. It's in the trenches and fighting for every single yard. And, Commanders seem to be more of a, in the office type of person. But anyway, it's beside the point. But the Commanders are the best team in the NFC East. And I'm glad to see that. I'm glad to see that they're moving on from the past and they actually are getting better this year. But this is a Jekyll and Hyde type of year so far. We really don't know if Washington's real, in my opinion. But in this game, I think they have a chance to prove that they are with the win. Obviously, beating the Ravens would be a huge step forward in taking control of that NFC East when you have the dysfunctional antics of the Cowboys and the Eagles. And then, the Giants just don't have the personnel to pull it off, in my opinion. But they would take control of it. So do you think Washington, who, by the way, ranks number 1 in the NFL, scoring 31 points per game, fourth, 393 offensive yards per game, second in points per play, which is critical in some of my algorithms, third in yards per play, number 1 in third down conversions at a ridiculous 52% with a rookie quarterback?
Yeah, no, it's impressive.
So do you think they can keep this going, or is there going to be is this going to be the one where they just fall flat on their face?
Well, so the thing is then you look at the Ravens, who are the first in total yards. They are first in rushing. They're second in points, right? You look at Washington, they are second in rushing, but the Ravens are first in run defense. And so, this is going to be probably the game of the week. This is going to be, is Washington for real? And has the Ravens turned the corner on how they started the season by not using their complement of weapons, right? So have the Ravens learned and leaning into what they have, or is Washington really this far ahead of where we thought they would be? And so I'm really looking forward to this game. This is 100% a game I will keep my money in my pocket for, because this is much of a coin flip as you could get.
I agree. I think the biggest matchup, in my opinion, is you have a Ravens team that's gaining 211 rushing yards per game. Mm-hmm. It sounds like we're talking about an SEC team.
Exactly.
Going up against a Washington team that, if they have an Achilles heel, it seems to be stopping the run, ranking 22nd, allowing 130 yards.
Well, and
If Washington has to.
When you think about Derrick Henry leading the league in rushing, and they didn't use him the first 2 weeks, right? He had 30 carries over 2 games to start the year. Imagine if they actually just gave him the 25 carries he should have had. I mean, he might have another 200 plus yards on his year.
He could be almost double the second place guy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's truly a great story. My concern with that matchup, Bo, is that I think when Washington has to commit a safety or both of them to stop the run, Lamar's too talented, and play action pass, his ability to extend plays is going to really expose that back end, which will be in man coverage with no help.
Exactly.
So it's a double-edged sword to focus on stopping that run. You got to kind of stop everything with them, but this will be the test.
Well,
no question.
The line's 6.5 last time I saw it.
6 or 6.5. It seems to be going down to 6, which means money's going on Washington.
As it should be, because at 6.5, I would have taken Washington to cover. At 6, I feel less confident about it. That hook I actually liked in this instance, right? But because I think this Ravens defense will probably limit Washington to a couple of field goals, and I think that it ends up being kind of about that 6-point game, right? It's one score kind of thing, and it's going to come down to Washington how to kick a field goal instead of, get a touchdown.
Yep.
So at 6.5, I liked the number. At 6, I don't love it.
Yeah, I agree with you. And again, it prompted my live in-game betting. So if you don't like 6, you could bet 50% pre-flop at 6, even though you don't like it. Yep. And then I do see, say Baltimore wins the toss, they're going to defer.
Of course.
Say they shut Washington down inside the 25, punt, they go down the field, score. Then you have a chance to get Washington at probably 9.5, 10, and that would be how I would try to do it. Or if Washington takes the lead, you could also add that 50% if Baltimore retakes the lead sometime in the second half. So you could go 7-0 and then 7-3, 10-7 Ravens, and then put the rest of the bet on at that point. Mm-hmm. Just a thought.
Yeah.
I think you're right. It's the game of the week for sure. And, it'll be the biggest test. Hate saying the word over and over again, but we'll find out real quick if the Commanders are going to be a contender.
Well, I mean, I think it tells us a lot about both teams, because it'll tell us a lot about the Ravens too, because this is going to be, whether you think the Commanders are for real or not, the record is what it is. And so this is going to be a very important game for both teams.
It certainly is. It certainly is. And then our last game is the Steelers and Las Vegas. And I put this on there just for Rudy's because the Steelers are his favorite team. And
he's gonna like this game then.
What's that?
He's going to like this game then.
I would certainly think so, because I think Las Vegas is at that point where they might start mailing in the check.
Well, especially making the quarterback change they did. They have O'Connell getting the start this week. Man, that doesn't say you're trying to win to me. That sure makes it look like you have a potential suitor for Devontae. You're going to get O'Connell out there, and you're looking at a quarterback this year.
Yep.
That looks like you're looking at the off season already.
It does. And tanking is the word, and I don't believe that actually happens. I'll always believe that never happened in the NBA, but with the 76ers back in the day, it's hard. You could see that they had no talent on that roster, and they, and it actually hasn't worked out for them yet. Trust the process or something, or
yeah, the process did not work. But yeah. I mean, so there's two ways to look at it, because the players are never going to tank. Right? They're not going to deliberately put out bad tape, because that affects their ability to get their next job. So there's no way you're going to get the players to tank. But management can dictate who can be on the field, right? So like in this instance, you're going to bench Gardner Minshew, who isn't amazing, right?
He's effective.
But he can win you games,
Yep.
right? O'Connell, less so, right? So now you have Devontae Adams who wants to get out. Now he has a, mystery hamstring injury that is probably just them keeping him healthy so they can trade him, right? Yep. So you get rid of your main wide receiver, and then you have your backup become your starter. You have guys like Crosby who probably isn't going to play. This sure looks like they're just positioning themselves to have a high draft pick. And although the players won't buy into it, you can dictate which players are on the field. And, let's be honest, if you throw your second stringers out there and everybody else is full blast, you're going to lose a lot of games, even with maximum effort.
Absolutely true. I really don't have much more to add to this. Like I said, I was hoping, Rudy would have liked to chime in here for a good 5 to 10 minutes with some expertise of his own, because he knows that team inside and out.
Yeah.
But maybe this is to be safe. It seems too easy to bet them at -3. I don't like betting money lines at or -150 and higher, but they're right at 150, and it's probably a better bet to bet the money line. And all the Steelers have to do then is win.
This one feels like the easy bet, right?
It does. It does, and they do exist.
They do. Less so this year with all the upsets and just weird stuff that's happened. But, this one seems like the easy one. The Steelers, their defense is better. They have fewer injuries. I can't say the offense is better because their offense is also terrible. But when you're comparing them to the Raiders, it probably is better than the Raiders. Justin Fields is starting to play better. And the only weirdness with this team is the Russell Wilson element, right? And only because I believe he is healthy enough to play now. So that just adds kind of an off the field weird dynamic. But you have a guy that is, they're 3-2. So, you stick with the guy that's winning games for you for now. Jimmy Garoppolo built an entire career doing that. They didn't win any of those games because of Jimmy G, but he has a great winning percentage. And sometimes that keeps you in a job.
Yeah, Joe Flacco comes to mind too, back in the day, right?
Absolutely.
Super Bowl winner too.
Well, to be fair, his playoff run, actually, he played well. Right? The rest of the year, whatever. The guy that really comes to mind of just, being on the team, got you a ring is Trent Dilfer, if we're sticking with
there you go.
Right?
Great
because,
name.
he just didn't he just didn't turn the ball over, right? Like, he didn't hurt the team. And that defense was so elite that, they win the whole thing. But Dilfer to me is one of those Super Bowl winners that you're just like, yeah, okay. Like, that was a group project that you were around for, right? Like, you got the A because everyone else was great.
And I'd take that job in a second.
No question.
I did find this, Bo, betting against home dogs on the money line after that dog's been beaten by the spread by 21 or more points over the last 3 games and has a win percentage between 40 and 45% on the season. 72-20, 78%. That would support the Steelers at -150. So I think that's how I would recommend playing. I just don't like that -3. Like, you could be winning 21 to 9 and a meaningless touchdown with no time on the clock, and you're screwed.
Yeah.
So I think the safe play is the money line here.
Yeah, that's the way I would go. That was actually the thing that made the game tonight, Niners Seahawks, interesting, because so far this year, Seattle is 2-1 against the spread. And so even though they're not favored and there's a ton of injuries, they find a way to be there, right at the end. Like, they find a way to land in that spread. And honestly, they would have done it last week against the Giants. They just happened to get that field goal blocked. Otherwise, they they probably would have done it again. So, and they would have been 3-0 against the spread. So it's,
That's
I don't
right.
know, very, very interesting. It's hard to bet against the Hawks in that way. The Lions are very similar. The Lions are always great against the spread. Win or lose, the spread they usually pay out on.
Yep, I agree. And that trend probably continues too. So keep that in mind for Detroit this weekend as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess now we're to the best bets segment of the show. If anybody does want another game broken down analytically, just let me know, and I'll send you the data I have for both teams, because the data, I can make a case for both teams in just about every single game. So let me know on that. My best bet, Bo, is going to be a game we didn't talk about, but that Cardinals team, Cardinals versus Packers, coming off the huge win after getting shellacked the previous week to that by the Washington Commanders.
Yep.
And I think the Cardinals are undervalued, and we'll find out here. This is a road game at Lambeau Field at 1:00. Cardinals are that number I love now, 5.5. That number, you just automatically get attracted to the dog. But anyway, the following NFL system has gone 70-136 straight up. 127 ATS wins, 76 losses, 5 pushes. That's 64% over the last 15 seasons. Simply bet on road dogs priced between 3.5 and 10 points. And that dog is struggling on defense, allowing 28 or more points per game. If it is a non-divisional matchup, Bo, and involves two teams from the same conference, their record improves to 23-54 straight up, but 49-26 with 1 push against the number for almost 66% winning bets. I'm going to take the Cardinals here for our show best bet plus the 5.5 points. Now we'll go on to you. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I like that one. The other one I like, which is going to be, it's going to be weird to say because they're not a good team, but the Titans are a -2.5, and I like that number for them. Most of the betting is leaning towards the Colts, but the injuries that this Colts team has will really kind of, and unfortunately for Colts fans, they're not going to play extraordinarily well. And one thing that is undervalued with this Titans team is they actually have statistically the best defense in the league when it comes to total yardage. You have Anthony Richardson that is questionable coming in. You have Jonathan Taylor that is questionable coming in. So I like the Titans to actually cover this and win outright, even though most of the betting has actually been leaning towards the Colts.
It sure has. I just pulled that up while you were talking. It's some of the books, it's over 80% on the Colts. And that's, tickets involving the spread, not right. Money line. And pretty good action on this game too. The one game that has a lot of action on it, almost double everybody else, which is kind of mind blowing in a way, is the Texans and the Patriots. 84% on the Texans. Line has moved a half point up to -7.
Yep.
We'll have to look at that one as we get closer to Sunday too, because it kind of smells like I'm not going to say a trap, but it's making me think Patriots for some reason, even though they're not a good team.
So if you think it's a trap there, if you go to Bet MGM, 98% Texans.
That's unbelievable.
That is insane.
that is irrational exuberance.
Oh, yeah.
As Greenspan said back in the day.
And it's still only a 7-point line. When you have 98 and the line hasn't gone past 7, you almost feel like the underdog has a real shot.
Yeah, it feels like the sharps are on the Patriots, and they're just gonna, that number will come down. It'll definitely. It's not 98% at the Circa, that's for sure.
No,
but it could be 78, 80 at the Circa. But then as we get closer to Sunday, I think that line has more of a chance of going to 6 than 6.5 or 7. It's at 6.5 now. I don't think it's going to go to 7.5 because that books don't want that hook after all the betting action that's taken place. That's for sure. But Bo, before we sign off here, I want you to tell everybody where they can find you and tell them about your shows that are upcoming. I think you have one coming up next.
Yeah, so you can find me right here on YouTube at Football-Talk. I have shows every day of the week on Roku TV. Coming up next, we are Coast to Coast. It is a daily sports show on YouTube and Roku. And then I actually have my Pick'em show at 11 o'clock Pacific today.
That's awesome. So there you have it. Complete breakdowns of several games and our best bets. Hopefully we go 2-0, and hopefully next week we'll have Eytan Shander back in action off the injured list, and also good old Rudy Reyes of the Pittsburgh Steelers fan base, and also does media work in Southern California for iHeart Radio and Fox. Yep. So until then, on behalf of Bo and myself, thank you for watching the show, and always remember, bet with your head, never over it. And may all the wins be yours.